Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us today. Every first Wednesday of the month, we we have Venerable De Hong to lead us on a half-hour meditation, half-hour Dharma sharing, question and answer, and if we have time, maybe even a mini interview. So I will turn the podium over to Venerable De Hong. And for those of you who are joining us on Insight Timer, unfortunately, we're not able to put the two of us on the screen. So you would need to go to our YouTube channel to actually watch the video. But I would still encourage you to post your questions on Insight Timer if you happen to be on Insight Timer. And I actually did post the link, but they deleted it because they didn't want to have any external link. But if you go to our circle, you will find it. So with that, um,
Thank, thank you, Danny. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So, from a lot of you request that I talk about trauma. I just want to emphasize that I'm not a psychologist or therapist. It's just that from my own personal experience, as well as my work inside the prison, I'm able to learn about trauma much more than I thought I uh, didn't know. But first, I apologize for my voice because my allergy has been so bad that I lost my voice, so I sound a bit hoarse. Anyway, so a bit on trauma. I try to not talk as much. I suggest that you look at the PowerPoint and get the three books that I recommend, and also download the one PDF file on ACE, basically Adverse Childhood Experiences. Okay, this is just an outline. I'll go right into it. Um, for those of you who experience trauma or adverse or ACEs, bit adverse childhood experiences, then I would say go online and search for this sheet, and you can put down the type that you experienced and see what your score is. My score is 8, other than my parents being divorced or being incarcerated. I experienced 8. My score is 8. And just first couple things in terms of in my unconscious mind that I have not been able to recall. My mom kept explaining or saying that when I was 2 years old, for some reason I was crying and my dad kept hitting me until a neighbor who went by and she said, "Why do you keep hitting the boy?" And he said, I bring him into this world, I can take him out anytime. And that is in for a lot of folks, that's their view, their attitude. And also at 3 years old, I fell from my bed. I broke both of my hands on my arms. I don't recall, or I cannot remember. Now I can remember when I was 5 years old during the Vietnam War, the Tet Offensive. Some of you may remember. My parents and I and a younger brother who was 2 years old. He's 3 year. His name is Simon. My mom was also pregnant with my brother Dennis. Every night for the whole month, we ran away from our house because of the bombing, and we lived in Saigon at the time. The U.S. military and the Vietnamese Communist government, they were fighting. They were dropping bombs. We ran away every night, and along the way, like my parents would wake me up at midnight. I would get up. I would take my pillow and put on my flip flops and we would walk for about an hour, and we would stay outside of some kind of warehouse, and then in the morning before sunrise, we would walk back home. But one thing that I never know why I was adverse, I never liked loud noises, fireworks, helicopters, motorcycles, and that was the root cause of my aversion to loud noises. I didn't know that until I was into my 40s. Then 7 years old, I was drowned. I was in the countryside. We thought that my grandma passed away, but somehow she passed. She was supposed to pass away, but then she woke up. But I ended up being drowned in the South China Sea because my grandparents' house was just right in front of South China Sea. I drowned and someone actually saved me. So that was my second or my fourth type of trauma. And then beginning 9 years old, in 1972, I learned how to cook, and also I had to take care of my sister after she was born. My mom, because my mom had to work, and eventually, uh, I had another sister in 74, and then the third one, 76. I had to wash, we didn't have diapers. We used cloth for them to put on as diapers. So in the morning, I had to wash them with all the poops. I don't want to gross you out. And also I had to cook in the morning. I didn't go to bed until 11:30 or so because I had to do my homework. And then I had to wake up at 5 or 6 to do my chores. And then from 77 to 81, I mean, actually, for the 18 years of my life in Vietnam, my dad constantly hit me, berated me, told me that I was a nobody, that how could I make it? I would never make it, this and that. But the 4 years from 77 to 81, he 3 times or 4 or 5 times a week, he would come home drunk. He would drink a case of beers every night. He would get drunk. He would get home either screaming at us or hit us, and then he would throw up. I was the one because I was what 14, and I had to clean it up. And also my parents were arguing all the time, and even my dad was like cursing at my mom, the F word. And so I grew up in what you call a domestic violent environment, or dysfunctional family. That's the one root cause of people being incarcerated and being physically abused and verbal abuse. That's a second type of incarceration. And then I left Vietnam when I was 18. I was on a boat for a week. I spent 10 months in the refugee camp trying to survive. It was also a bit quite traumatic. Then I arrived in Cleveland, Ohio, with my younger brother. I only had $10 in my pocket, dealing with. I did not even speak, a word of English. I only knew ABC. That was the extent of how much I know, and I got no help from anyone. So all of this trauma have been in my conscious mind, and that's how I'm able to recall. Now, August 24th, I was on the highway. Everyone stopped, and this pickup truck, F 1999 F, was it 350 or 150, crashed right into my SUV. It was declared by my insurance, that the car was totaled. And also for the past 3 years, I did on the to the left is my house that I just sold. To the right is my neighbor, who is now in under the care of Department of Health because he has psychosis. For 3 years, he accused me of gassing him. He would come over with some kind of weapon, wood, hammer, until July 21st. He came over at 2 o'clock in the morning with, on the left hand, he had a sledgehammer. On the right hand, he was holding an AR-15. I almost freaked out, but I should remain calm until the next day, until the morning to go to the cop, and they didn't have time. So, and when I came home at 10:53, he ran over, and that's when I called 911, and he has been in jail since then. So other than so going back to my childhood trauma, the one thing that I how did I cope with it? I cry every night, at least 3 or 4 times a week. My eyes would be swollen in the morning. My mom would cry too, but she was helpless. Sometimes she was the enabler as well. And I was suicidal. That something that I did not know until I learned about trauma, because I thought about killing myself or running away or taking, poison, but I couldn't. But crying was how I cope with it. And how I process it is I openly talk about it. Most people that I know knew about what happened to me. Even to strangers, I talk about it. That's the key, communication. That's the one key to addressing and processing trauma. Um, I also, over the years, I kept asking why my dad did it to me. But until I accepted, I was never appeased. So, but since that, I had all kinds of resentment, anger, ill will directed at him. Even after he died, I felt a sense of relief, but at the same time, I was still mad. But it took me years to get all of this out of my system. And I can say that I don't easily get angry, because if I do, I'm the one that suffers, right? I may still be irritated when I have to deal with people or difficult people, but I learned to let it go quickly. So that was my experience with trauma, with ACEs. So what is ACE? Actually, I will show you guys in the slide later. According to CDC, 64% of US adults experience at least one type of ACE before the age of 18. And that is very, very traumatic. And also, according to Compassion Prison Project, they reported that 98% of the incarcerated population experience at least one type of ACE. And if you want the books that I list in the PowerPoint tonight, talked about ACE. But if you want to read more about it, there is a website that I asked someone to create. It's called Healing Dharmas, in which I we typed in, we published, stories of people inside the prison who experienced trauma, and it's really really traumatic. And here on this is the sheet. You guys can Google this on the internet and you can find it too. I found this on the internet, but actually it was by one of my students who was incarcerated, who is now home. He told me about this. So on the left column, those are the types of ACE that kids experienced. On the second column, those are the issues that traumatized kids or adults have, uh, health risk, neurobiological issues. And then the third column is the long-term consequences of unaddressed trauma. So, and it can be physical illness or uh, mental illness. So keep that in mind. And here, this is so we keep talking about the family, but actually another set of conditions is the environment, the community that we live in. If you live in a poor neighborhood, chances are this is what you experienced from home as well as from the environment, the community that you lived in. So, what is trauma according to the DSM-5? Trauma is an actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. Um, and it, excuse me, and it can cause, psychological stressful symptoms, or what we call PTSD. But something like divorce or job loss is not considered trauma, so keep that in mind. It can be traumatic, but that's not really trauma according to this definition. These are the different types of trauma that because of the time, I will skip, here. I want to bring your attention to the book The Body Keeps Us Score. This is an excellent read on by Dr. Basil van der Kolk on how trauma affects the body, the brain, the mind, and the emotions. And he had a lot of cases with humans as well as with dogs. Um, the issue with trauma is PTSD, major PTSDs. And basically, according to the National Institute of Health, is that PTSD is defined as a psychiatric disorder in an individual who has experienced or witnessed a devastating traumatic event. So let's say if you witnessed by accident, witness a car accident, or if you witness people fighting or witness a gunshot, those experiences are traumatic. Keep that in mind. Because once we see it, it's registered in our mind, and it affects our brain, it affects our limbic system, such as the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. And it can be causing us to be uncomfortable in terms of being irritated, or that we freeze. I will show you at near the end of the presentation about the window of tolerance, which I think I showed you guys before. And here I'll just briefly touch on the number one, the three avenues that Dr. Basil van der Kolk talked about to healing trauma. Basically, it's the top-down approach, meaning by talking about it and reconnecting with others, allowing us to know and understand what's going on with us while processing the memories of trauma. But keep this in mind, our memories are random, they are sporadic, they don't have this what we call, chronological order. When you are meditating or when you are being triggered, something comes up, and that is from your experience, from your past experiences of trauma. The second book that I'm using is The Deep as Well by Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. She is California's what the I forgot the title. I'm sorry. Um, she's a doctor. Anyway, she used the study, but that I will also list. ACE has an adverse effect on a person's growth and development, physical health, as well as long-term well-being. For anyone who forgot or who didn't address it, it will come up in your 40s or 50s. She mentioned I think her brother-in-law who was in software, who was in his 40s, he was in his, you know, um, healthiest form, and he had a stroke. So just know that trauma affects pretty much the rest of your life if it is not addressed, if it is not processed, if it is not healed. And it causes, a whole lot of chronic illness, even early death. Um, and she also stated that ACEs can happen to anyone, be it kids, especially kids that belong to people of color, or living in poverty, or white middle class. And being aware of ACE is a path of your score, is the path to empowerment. And here she also said, in to heal from your trauma is communication, is to talk about it. She used the term speak the unspeakable, no matter how bad it is, and it can be re-traumatizing when you talk about it, but it's important to talk about it. And she also said mindfulness meditation and mindfulness practice will help. And here's the link for the following slides that I'm talking about. This is a really a major study by Dr. Vincent Felici and Robert Anda about ACE. And it's a 10-year study. It involved 17,000 participants, and they were able to correlate, they correlate the ACE score to health and behaviors occurring over the traumatized adults' lifespans. And what they found is that ACEs are common, they're highly interrelated, and they pile up and can have an cumulative impact, and it accounts for a large percentage of health and social problems. I you know it, this that those slides are online. I only list three. I highly recommend that you guys find the slides and download it. And lastly, this is this book, The Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate. And he basically said trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. Meaning that, let's say you were abused verbally or physically. Um, for it did not happen just one time, right? It happened over the years. Then you will notice, you'll be able to feel in your body the tightness in your chest area, or the sensations in your throughout your body, perhaps in your abdomen or your tummy, or your neck and shoulders, or when you witness similar traumatic experience, you get chills all over. That's trauma, and that's what Dr. Gabor Mate meant when he said is what's going on, what happened inside you. And the issue, even America, as great of a nation as we are, our society is not conscious of trauma. And our education, we don't talk about it. In our medicine, we don't address it. Even for Dr. Gabor Mate, he went to medical school, they didn't talk about trauma. And guess what? Our law and criminal justice system also do not address trauma. So what it is that our health and illness are not random states. They happen. They are an expression of an entire life lived, and it cannot be understood in isolation. You need to look at your whole life, or the doctors need to look at the patient's whole life, the circumstance, the relationship, the events, the experience, in order to better treat the patients. And he suggests that, don't look at disease as an entity, but look at it uh, as a process. And also, Dr. Candace Bird, she used the term body mind. It refers to one thing. Our body and mind are connected, it cannot be understood separately. And basically it describes the oneness of the human psyche, basically your mind, spirit, and the body. And according to Dr. Gabor Mate, what's the the way to healing, which means your wholeness. Um, and it is that our capacity to heal is born of the willingness to do just that, a moment by moment commitment, basically mindfulness practice. And keep in mind, people who were traumatized or who have been traumatized, they cannot they cannot live in the present moment because they don't feel safe. Their minds keep wandering away, or trying to look for something to numb the sensations, the tightness inside the body. The other thing that I also want to bring up is the intergenerational trauma. This was coined by Dr. Vivian Redcliffe. Basically, uh, intergenerational trauma means that the descendant of someone who experienced a traumatic event, um, and it affects their behavior, their emotion. Let's say if your parents experience trauma, they will behave, they will inflict the damage on you. Because and also, from what I have read, children born for to parents who are traumatized, it also affects their stress, their ability to deal with stress. They cannot deal with stress. So this is the chart, the slides that I want to show is that the window of tolerance. Let's say when you have a conversation or when you are meditating, you can function fine. You can talk, you can think properly. But when you are being triggered by by a traumatic event, when you're during meditation, then if you feel angry or irritated, then you fall outside of your window of tolerance, which is called hyper arousal. If you freeze, if you zone out, that means that you are falling into the hyper arousal zone. What you want to do is stop that, come back to the breath and get into your window of tolerance. This can happen anytime, not just meditation, but it's important that if you experience that during meditation and if you cannot deal with it, if you broke down and cry, then stop the meditation and a bit of the meditation. So tonight I with the instruction, I will use the window of tolerance. Basically, what you want to be aware is that traumatized people could be triggered anytime by anything, and it could happen anywhere. During meditation, if you notice the feeling of restlessness or anger lasting more than a couple of minutes, then you stop. Don't continue because you don't want to be re-traumatized. What happened to me back then was that every time I meditate, I broke down and cried. I wish I didn't know that I was being re-traumatized. And all when you are doing something during your waking hours, if you're being triggered by your senses, then come back to your breath to find balance. If you feel overwhelmed, then get out of the situation. But if you don't, if you notice that you don't feel that you feel that you're being triggered, use the sense door practice. Come back to the breath. Come back to your be mindful of your senses, and that's how it works with the window of tolerance. Okay, so I will stop and we can meditate for some time. Let's take a few deep breaths. As you breathe in, notice your body may tense up a little bit because your body takes an amount of energy to fill your lungs with air. But when you breathe out, it takes no effort or energy, and that's how you are able to relax your body and let go of your thoughts, let go of your planning, let go of your worry. Just like Ajahn Brahm said, relax to the max. When you take some deep breaths, you can breathe out through your mouth, and it's okay. And try to relax your whole body. Once you are done, you can sit in your comfortable position. Allow your body to settle into your posture and start with a smile. Notice how you feel when you smile and how that feeling gives rise to the physiological sensations in your body. And know that the feeling, the sensations are quickly fading away. And how you feel next depends on your mind, your body, or what you do next. Let's just continue to smile if you can and notice how you feel and how it affects your body. And when you are able to express your feeling and sensations in the body, that is what we call emotion. But at the moment, as you're meditating, your emotion is at the baseline because you're not reacting to your feeling or sensations. You are just simply being aware of it. You are in the present moment. You're not judging. You're not reacting. If you don't feel like smiling, a gentle smile, just notice the reluctance, and it's okay. And check to see whether you feel pleasant or unpleasant and how that feeling affects your body. You may be able to quickly notice your feeling may be caused by images, by people that you know at home, at work, or personal friends. Those are what we call external conditions. So see how those external conditions make you feel pleasant or unpleasant. Ignore thoughts that come up. You just want to be fully present with your feeling. Let's move on and do the sense door practice by first noticing the environment around you and the space around you, the room temperature. Let's check in with your senses. First, your mind. See how busy it may be or restless or both. Your feeling, your perception, your view, your attitude, your mood, all can be colored by what's going on in your mind. Then your sense of seeing, whether your eyes are open or closed. Your sense of hearing, knowing that you cannot turn off your hearing consciousness. Your sense of smell, your sense of taste. These four senses, at the moment as you're meditating, are at rest. Your mind could be at rest too if it's not thinking, wandering, or producing thoughts. Then your sense of touch, just being aware of the sensations that are constantly coming and going, either inside your body, in your chest area, in your tummy, your neck and shoulders, or the sensations at the skin level. This is called the sense door practice. For when you step into a new, a different environment, you can be grounded and not easily distracted. or feel overwhelmed when you're being triggered. Let's move on and practice concentration by bringing your attention to your breath. You can either pay attention to your in breath and out breath, or the sensations at your nostrils as you breathe in and out. Concentration here means that you choose to stay with the breath or the sensations. No matter what's going on in your mind, what kind of thoughts that come up, or what kind of noise or sound that you hear in your environment. Your mindfulness or awareness is also at work because it is aware of thoughts coming from the mind or sound and noise in your surrounding. If your mind is restless, wandering away, you can use a mantra or your favorite prayer, but ground your attention in the breath. This also requires patience, meaning that every time you notice your mind wanders away, bring it back to the breath. Or if you get involved with your thoughts or daydream, let it go, come back to the breath. A lot of these thoughts that come up are from your conscious mind. They're not your reality. So let them go if possible. Just know that you're making an effort to focus, to develop, to cultivate concentration. It helps to smile because the mind is very sensitive. It feels bored easily. Smile helps you to feel pleasant. It also gives you a sense of alertness. So as you are sitting, let's say if something comes up, an image, and that you don't feel comfortable, if you feel irritated or angry, that means that you're outside of your window of tolerance. If you feel numb or frozen, that means that you fall into the hypo arousal zone, which is also outside of your window of tolerance. Come back to the breath. Let go of that image. If that feeling lasts more than 2 or 3 minutes, then you can stop meditating, open your eyes, and look around the room or the space around you, just so that you can get your balance back and feel comfortable. And once you find a sense of ease, you can continue to meditate. If not, it's okay, you don't have to continue. You can put on a piece of music or something to relax your mind, to ease your feeling. And this is one way that you deal with your feeling when one of your senses is being triggered. By image, that's your mind. By noise or sound, that's your hearing, your ears. By what you see, that's through your eyes. Or smelling something through your nose. Or even eating something through your tongue, the taste. Or if someone accidentally touch you, and that could also be a trigger. But always come back to the breath, just so that you can center yourself and balance yourself. Let's sit in silence for the next few minutes. Continue to stay with the breath. And make sure that you stay inside your window of tolerance. let's check in with your mind. See how settled, perhaps how clear it is. That is less reacting, less judging, less chattering. Your feeling, your perception, your view, your attitude, your mood, all can be colored by what's going on in your mind. The sensations in your body, your emotions, your qualities of mindfulness or awareness, your concentration, your patience, your ability to stay within the window of tolerance, and a sense of awareness. All right. I think I'll leave the rest of the time for you guys to ask questions if you have any. You're muted, Danny.
Oh, I said we have some technical difficulty today, meaning that we're not able to put both of us on the
Insight.
Insight timer. I just counted them. I'm actually running 6 or 7 pieces of software here. Allow us to be together on Zoom and then using another piece of software to live cast it to YouTube and Facebook. And so when we started doing this in English, I wanted to bring it to Insight Timer. So we had another piece of software that project this onto Insight Timer. And for some reason, I'm not able to do that today. But so the students are probably on Insight Timer, probably watching YouTube, but they're probably watching a time delayed version. So maybe the questions are not coming in yet. But in any case, I thought maybe since we have some time, maybe we'll, if possible, maybe we do two things. One is to have an update of the work that you're doing in the prison. I know you have two gentlemen who have sent you two letters, so we'd like to talk about that. But before we do that, I was very curious about a comment that you made the other day when you said that you were in one of the prison and incarcerated individual came to your meditation for the first time, and then he was crying,
Yeah. Um,
and he
he
didn't
was
understand how he could cry. I can imagine this guy is 6 feet 3, 250, 280 pounds,
no, he's
muscle
about my height.
everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah, I think he's in his 50s. He was surprised that he was able to cry when he watched TV that people were crying. He did not understand how that could happen because he told me this is the prison, we're not supposed to cry. And so you know how tough you have to be or that you have to pretend how tough you are
Yeah,
and repress everything else into your unconscious mind, and that is not healthy.
yeah,
And so what I explained to him was that I said, well, when you meditate, you have empathy and compassion for other people. You feel their suffering, and that's why when and you can relate to it because when they cry, you cry, and that is normal human behavior. And he was like, "What?" He said, "Huh? I'm in prison, and
yeah.
here because he used to live a life of drugs and violence, so he would never cry, you
It's not
know.
it's not accepted. It's not
No,
accepted since
yeah,
childhood, and especially not in prison. Prison violence is
yeah.
the only common language, and so if you cry, you show weakness, right?
Correct.
And
However, just so you guys know, the folks who come to meditate with me, especially when we have a day-long meditation, at the end of the day, everyone cries.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
What I wanted to bring out is I think in the North Indian tradition, in the yogi tradition, they talk about our existence in terms, from the outer to the inner, and the outer is the just the physical body. It's when we consume food, it convert into this, And then the one layer inside is the intellect, is the brain, and then inside is the energy, and then beyond the energy is like the identity. That's really like the non-thinking mind, the subconscious part. So first is just the identity, and then finally when you get to the really inside, they call it bliss. And so that's in our language we call that the four immeasurables. That's the loving kindness, compassion, empathy, and equanimity. And so most of us are we have built the armor around that, right? We have built the armor around that, and which is part of a problem, right?
Yeah.
That we're just like swimming in this emotion, and but in fact, it's an armor. It really doesn't allow us to get into our inner core. And
Correct.
so one of the benefit of meditation is all of a sudden that opens up, and when it opens up, we become very vulnerable because we're really attached to other people's emotion, the love and all that. I find myself easier to cry now.
Oh,
And
same here. I cry all the
yeah,
time.
I much easier for me to cry. When I
Hmm.
watch a sad movie or when I see a dog being abandoned. It's just like this.
Yeah. It's normal,
So
you know.
it's normal. It's normal. In fact, anything else is not normal. Our way of life in the modern society is not normal because we're
Yes.
so bottling up with all the things that came from our past, which
Hmm.
is mostly trauma. Okay, so let's quickly get to the two letters that I think one you like and one I like.
Okay. The one. So right here, this is a letter that I got today, and this guy, he is out as of today. He did a drawing and then he put away, and and as he was packing, he found it, and what he said was that he is now out. Um, and he said basically, thank you for all you have done for me. There's so much
Let
you
me
have
let me let
helped
me
me.
let me let me read it.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think it's good to D. I just want to say thank you for all that you have done for me. There is so much that you have helped me with, and I have a lot of love for you and consider you a true friend. This is the last time that you will see from me in prison. I am going home on Tuesday, and I hope to talk to you soon after. I hope you like the painting. Uh, Something
I meant
I meant to send it to you in January when me and
Damien.
Namian did it. Uh, he
He was giving me.
he was giving me a lesson, but
Hmm.
I lost it during the CRC move, and he put the move in quote.
Yeah, he was
Who
supposed to
knows what?
transfer. Hmm.
Yeah, who knows what that means? I mean, the move could meant that he was put in solitary. Who knows? That never happened. I recently found it tucked inside an envelope in my
Lacquer.
locker when I was sending things out. Please stay safe and never stop doing what you do. The effect that you have on people's life is so much more than you know. It is so important. I appreciate you and all that you do. Never stop working. All right.
He never mentioned pay, like keep working, but like,
Yeah.
I don't mean
Let,
to.
let, let's remove that for a while. Let's can
Okay.
we remove that? Just have a discussion.
Hmm.
So yeah, just okay. So this is in some way is gratifying, in some ways is scary, right?
Yeah. Like don't, keep working.
You keep working. You say, I thought I would be done in 10 years or maybe six or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's but in any case, I think it's easy for you not to um, like not to spend too much time on that, even though it's a good thing. But I think for us, for the especially the students, I think it shows the not just the quality of your work, but the importance and the necessity of any work that are to be done at the prison.
Hmm.
Because when they call CDCR, right? Oh no, what? Oh no,
CDCR.
CDCR, right?
Hmm.
It's the uh, correction
The
and
California Department of Correction and
CDC,
Rehabilitation.
yeah. And we all know that there is no rehabilitation there. There is none. And
Not much.
that's why 60% of the people who release from prison end up going back.
In 3 years.
Whereas in 3 years, whereas most of the prisoner, most of the incarcerated individuals, once they get exposed to Dharma and meditation and they get to understand their inner self a little bit more, very rarely do they go back,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Yes.
Okay, now let's bring up the other letter. And there's a reason for me to do that. Now I know, uh, so in the past, no, the other one, there we go.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. So in the past, I mentioned the importance of donation, and because it takes a lot of resources to do what you do, not to mention the maintenance of the car, the gasoline, the overnight lodging, all that. Just the fact that we're trying to bring books into the prison. Books are very expensive, and also we are encourage them to write to us, and so stamps are also very expensive. So the two things that we donate are books and stamps. So here's a letter that I like to whom it may concern. Now he actually doesn't know you.
Hmm.
This is just he write to
Yeah.
you, just thanking you because someone that had given him a gift. I'm writing this letter to express my gratitude for providing me with a copy of Road to Freedom. I have been trying to get hold of this book for quite some time, but have not been able to. Thanks to your generosity, I now have a copy. This book will help me address some of my factors, and gain insight so I can be better prepared to make amends to my victims. Evan, that's his person's name,
Yeah.
was kind enough to give me this copy of this book. There's no way I could repay you for your generosity other than the thank you from, I suppose it's the bottom of my heart,
Hmm.
right? These books, yeah, can you remove that? These books are really important to our friends
That
inside the prison.
that
It
book
opens
costs
a window
almost,
to the
if I may say, that book costs almost $50. There's no way in hell that they could have the money for it because they get paid 8 cents or 10 cents an hour.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Even if they're incarcerated for life, they won't pay for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have to send them hard copies. We can't send them ebooks, right? So I
Correct.
mean,
No.
when we're outside for convenience, for cost, we prefer ebook. If you have Amazon Prime, you don't even have to pay for it,
Hmm.
right? But this is a very expensive way of actually
Yeah.
bringing information. The book is truly a window for them,
Yes.
right? So that's it. Wanted to share that with our students, both in Insight Timer as well as Facebook and
YouTube.
YouTube. Um, if I may, maybe I'll take another 5 minutes. I know we're 7 o'clock now. But
Sure.
you mentioned in your presentation. By the way, before I do that, I like the way you said, or maybe you quoted someone else. It says that trauma is not what happened to you, but what happened inside of you as a
Yeah.
result of what happened to you.
Hmm.
So this is the problem, right? Because when we talk about trauma center, this is the place where the the body is broken and they fix it, right?
Hmm.
They don't really pay attention to what actually happened inside of you, even though they fix the outside,
Yeah.
right? The outside is almost like just a symptom. What remains is what's inside. But trauma, that's not what they do. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to talk about trauma, but I want to talk about generational trauma because you mentioned that
Yeah.
generational or intergenerational. Now, last week or last month, we spent some time talking about your journey journey is a fancy word, nice word, from Vietnam to eventually America, sharing a tiny boat with 70 people, something like that. 100, no, a couple hundred people, right?
142.
142 to start, 143 to end up, right?
Yeah,
And for seven, so 6 nights and 7 days,
correct.
your choice of beverages was either your own urine or the seawater.
Yeah.
So that was a good story. I think one thing, and then you mentioned a little bit more about the other things you do, and we actually did an interview of that in Cantonese where we talk about how you meet death, how many times you actually meet death, right? And but I want to focus on one thing. You kind of mentioned that. I want to focus on your father.
Hmm.
Now, when you left Vietnam at the age of 19, your
18.
father, 18, your parents are alive. And then
Yeah.
after you came to the United States and you became a citizen, you applied for unification with your family. So your parents came, so they were still alive. And then
Yes.
eventually your father passed away first and your mom passed away. Um, but in any case, um, I want to talk about how you grew up and the violence and that you had to endure day by day, mainly from your father. But before we do that, because we want to focus on generational trauma, let's talk about your father. Your father is not Vietnamese.
No. Yeah, okay. Yeah. See, he was, by the time he was 6 years old, he was born 1935 in China, in Guangdong or
Hmm.
Canton,
Hmm.
south of China. By the time he was 6 years old, both of his parents passed away. So he was raised by his grandma at 6 years old. And by when he was 13, that was 1948. At that time, it was after World War II. There was a great famine where so many people died of hunger. So he suffered that greatly and he never stopped talking about it. And I did not even know, or I was too young to understand. So at the time, all that he had to eat was the yam leaves as meals. There was no rice, nothing. And so like he kept bringing that up. And then he was told by people in China in the village at the time that, hey, you should go to Vietnam. They are so wealthy. When you go in front of their house, they give you meat, they give you all kinds of things.
Hmm.
So eventually he went with his two uncles, who brought him. He was 13. Who brought him to Vietnam, to in Saigon, and he did not have time to go to school at 13 years old. He had to go to work, and his two uncles took his pay. So that was another trauma. So he suffered a lot of trauma, and that's why he
Hmm.
started drinking after he came to Vietnam until
Hmm. Hmm.
six when he in 99 when he died at the age of 64 because of liver cancer. So much
Hmm.
alcohol.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
bad.
Now, a little bit of history there. So you mentioned 1948
Yeah.
is when he left. Now, of course, the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. For all practical purpose, World War II ended in 1945. But between 45 and 49, there was actually a civil war between the communists and what's known as the nationalists.
Yeah.
So, and now at the same time, because it's already after World War II, the French actually came back to Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and Vietnam became a colony again. So
Mm-hmm.
comparing to China, Vietnam was actually a rather peaceful place, right?
Yeah.
So in comparison, right? Because the war between the communists and the nationalists was very, very fierce. And also people want to escape communism. And so there are
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of reasons for him to leave. And so
Yeah.
being practically an orphan, growing up with all that wars and all that, I suspect that he didn't have much way of negotiating other than just the extreme, the
Yeah.
violence and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And so you were born in 1960
63.
something, 63. So your father was had already been in Vietnam for a little bit more than a decade, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
almost 2 decades, right? So he kind of built his living, and he married your mom,
Yeah.
right? And your mom parents also came from China,
Yes.
right? So, um, so you were the firstborn,
I was.
and you were a son. So
Yes.
in other family, you would be considered the jewel, but
Yeah.
not this family.
I was supposed to
So
get married and have kids.
yeah, yeah, when you were 17 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But in any case, so let's talk a little bit more about how you grew up and the violence that your father imposed on you.
Um, well, I actually just a quick thing. There's a documentary. Someone is doing a documentary on me, and it's supposed to be screened at USC in December. But
Hmm.
anyway, um, I was when I was 9 years old, I was forced by both of my parents to learn how to cook rice using
Hmm.
the cement stove using wood.
Hmm.
If I screw it up, if I overcook, if the rice got burned, I would be scolded, and I had to learn how to make meals, veggies, make soup. At 9 years old, at the same time, my sister, who was born in '72, I had to take care of her during the day because my mom had to work.
You
So
didn't just get scolded, you get beat up.
with yeah, yeah,
I know, but I want to make sure that people who are listening to this know that this is not just your father yelling at you.
correct. He
This
he
is
would
him
hit me.
yeah, and this is not something like he just rip off a tree branch
Hmm.
and go after you. He had some other things that in
Yeah.
mind, right? So
Yeah. So, I had no choice. At 9 years old, I did not know,
yeah.
right? So in Korean government, that was normal. So I had to, and at the same time, I had to go to school. I went to school from 8 a.m. to like 3 or 2 p.m. And as soon as I came home, I had to help out. I had to do all the cooking, took care of my sister, until 8 or 9 o'clock when I was able to have some time. I shower, I bathe, and then did my homework, and then I would go to bed at 11:30 or so, and then 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. I woke up, and that's day in and day out. And to me, that was normal. That was
Hmm.
how it was, right? Here we have
Hmm.
kids that, oh, they need to sleep 8 hours. I never had slept more than 6 hours. And
Hmm.
who knows, one day I may have dementia or something when I get older. But that's how it was from 9 years old until I was 18, until I left Vietnam. It was never stopped.
And
So
your father never have a kind word for you.
never, never. He would scream and hit me, and then after I cry, and then he would give me some money just to make it up, just to make him feel better, I think.
Hmm.
And no, there was one time, and actually, when I talked about this, I broke down and cried in the documentary. There was one time that I switched the radio station. He because he was listening to some Cantonese singing opera. We had some employees, and they asked me to turn it to Vietnamese channel, and I did. And he came up and he kicked me in the head, and he cursed at me. All I could do was cry and walked away. And that
Hmm.
was one of so many instances in which
Yeah,
I was physically hit,
yeah,
and also verbally yelled at, scolded at, cursing
yeah.
the worst of
And,
the.
and you mentioned earlier that he was a drunk too.
Oh yeah, he was always drunk. Yeah, he had,
Yeah.
just so you guys out there know, he had a case of beers. Like in Vietnam, they had the beer called 33. I don't know
Hmm.
who made
Yeah, I
it.
seen it. I seen it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
seen it.
a case of it every night, and he would come home on a moped, drunk, and I was the one. I had to take him upstairs and took his clothes up and put him to sleep. If he
Hmm.
was too drunk, if he threw up, I could not. I was only 14, right? I could not lift him. So we had a wooden bed downstairs. Then I would put him there. I had to clean up the mess, and then if we were giggling, I had three younger brothers at the time. We were smiling and talking. He would curse at us. He would make us burn an incense and kneel in front of the altar.
Hmm.
So that
Hmm.
was like daily basis, Danny.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know,
Hmm. Now, of
yeah,
course, in the future, we need to talk about how you actually elevate yourself from that. You know,
Yeah.
that didn't become you, right? That you
No.
were able to overcome that. And
Yeah.
so let's fast forward because we don't want to spend too much time. Let's fast forward. So finally, your father, your entire family
Mhm.
came to the United States. He
Yes.
didn't work, right? He didn't work. So
No.
you became the person that supported the family,
Yeah.
supported him. And by how old was he when he came?
1999. So he was, I think,
60,
54
54. Yeah.
or
I mean,
60. No, 54. Yeah. Right.
yeah. I mean, we still consider him a young man, but who am I talking
Uh-huh.
about? How did he never he still didn't stop. His abuse did not stop.
No, but not at me. I mean, he smoked inside the house 2 nights, 2 days after he came. I had bronchitis because he smoked. We live in Cleveland, Ohio. He smoked, so I inhaled the smoke during my sleep. I couldn't breathe. I went to the doctor. I had bronchitis because of that.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
but my one sister, she fell as she took the stair, and he cursed at her like, why can't you walk normally? And then I
mhm.
also had a sister who started dating, and he
Yeah.
used a cane and whipped her. Like, really? I told my mom he's gonna be arrested if
Yeah.
he didn't stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He doesn't
No,
sound like such a good guy.
no, you
But
know.
you mentioned earlier that you were actually relieved when he died.
Yeah. Because I didn't have to deal with him anymore, I felt
Hmm.
so much relief, even though I was full, I was my whole body, my mind was filled with anger and hatred, but because I didn't have to deal with him anymore. But I constantly carry those anger with me and hatred. Even when one of my brothers talked about him, I cursed at them. I said, shut up, because I did not process those the anger, the hatred yet. It took me years to to get through those.
Quickly, how did you do that?
I cry. At first, I cried. I said, like, was it my father? And I looked at my hands and my features, and they are like exactly like him. So,
Hmm.
there's no denying that I was not his son, but I
Hmm.
did not understand. So it took me
Hmm.
years to come to what I call acceptance. Like, okay,
Hmm.
it was eating me inside out, and then eventually the anger, the resentment, the ill will, I wish him dead all the time. I just couldn't, I couldn't do it, because in the Chinese culture you cannot attack your parents.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it took me years to let go of this anger. I did not know about forgiveness practice, but it took me years, so many times that I cried, broke down and cried during my meditation at night. And naturally, all my anger, my hatred against him dissipated, gone.
Yeah. Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up, and I'm glad that I'm not the first one to interview you about this because because you already have processed all that. But the reason I want to bring that up is that people who are listening to that, they might think that this is an extreme. It's not an extreme. When we're inside the prison talking to the people who are incarcerated, nine out of ten, that's the childhood, right? I
Yeah,
remember one guy, he cried because his only image of his father was his father pull a gun on him,
yeah,
you know. And so this is not extreme. It happens, and that's why I think in some time in the future I like to see that tree again.
hmm,
This is the tree
yeah,
that, if you imagine you have a tree, and if the soil is full of acid, then it makes sense that the fruits are very bitter. I mean, very sour and bitter, right? And that's a big part of the people who are incarcerated because their childhood is so violent,
yeah,
you know. And so that's why, this trauma could be generational, intergenerational, that one generation pass on to the other, right?
correct.
Now, I don't consider myself a traumatized individual, but our parents, they grew up in the war, so more or less we're influenced by how they survive in the war, the famine and all that, right? So I guess in conclusion, I think this is where the compassion comes in. When we see people who are incarcerated, I think we can find a little bit of compassion in us, at least understand that um, there's a reason for everything, right? There's a reason for everything
Yes.
sometimes, and also it's when we're working with these individuals and allowing them to meditate and dealing what's inside of them.
Yes.
And I think I like the way you talk about how if it's too much, stop, right?
Yeah.
Don't overdo it. Yeah, I
Correct.
like that. Okay,
Hmm.
all right. So I think we're 15 minutes over time, but I think it's nice to have that mini interview. Um, so I will say goodbye to everyone in Insight Timer, even though technically it didn't work out so well. And then also say goodbye to YouTube and Facebook, and then we can have a conversation on among the